can teach online,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing.
Your
And the
workshop.
pandemic caused all that.
I really enjoyed your workshops that you held on those weekends, those 2 day things at the motel.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. I thought that was really a good thing, but apparently that's not feasible anymore, huh?
No.
Okay.
I'm going to be in Old Car City on Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm still teaching a workshop down there each year.
Okay.
And then I have a conference I'm speaking at in Manassas, Virginia, next weekend. But I've got some programs I'm doing for them. But and Madeline Island in June. But
Oh,
other
yeah.
than that, I haven't done any workshops
Yeah.
in person. It's all been online.
Yeah, your Madeline Island's been sold out, I understand. So
Yeah, it's sold out already, and they're already setting it up to advertise for 2026.
okay.
So they'll start selling. They have 20 people on a wait list, so they're hoping to convert those people to 2026. Sign them up
Yeah.
for that.
Wow.
But you got a good lineup, Kathleen Clemens, Jackie Kramer, and Andrea Galick. She comes out of the Netherlands. And so it's a good lineup of flower photographers. And they get the lupin up there, and oh my, they're amazing.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to get started here. It's 10 o'clock. Welcome everybody to the Digital Forum. Anybody that would like to join our panel, you can raise your Zoom hand and we'll bring you in. Today our guest speaker is Mike Moats, and we're going to get going on this right away. So let me introduce Mike. Mike is an award-winning macro photographer from Sterling Heights, Michigan. Turned his passion for photography, which began as a hobby in 2001, into a successful full-time business. Since 2006, he has expanded his work to include close-up macro photography workshops, speaking engagements, macro boot camps across the U.S., as well as an online macro photo club. A member of the Fuji Pro talent team, Tamron Image Master, and Vanguard Pro, Mike has published his work in several magazines and released his first book, Tiny Landscapes, in 2008. His images have appeared in various photography collections and materials, and we've had Mike on a number of times with different topics. Today's topic is the 4 seasons of macro, and he will cover the seasons of the year, showing different life cycles and giving us all sorts of new ideas for types of photography. So let me switch over here to Mike. Let's see here. Boy, it's getting to the point. There's too many things to click. There you go. There's Mike. Welcome, Mike, and I'll let you take it from there.
Thank you. I will share my screen here. Get that first slide up. All right. How's that look, Jeff?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, so my program today is the 4 seasons of macro, and my goal in the next year is to expand your macro portfolio beyond flowers and bugs, because that is something that I see the majority of the time people spend all their time photographing flowers and bugs, which are fine. There's nothing wrong with those. I do. But I like to at least let people know there is a heck of a lot of stuff out there that you can shoot, and it goes through all 4 seasons. So it's a real interesting what I'm going to show you today, and it'll also get you inspired to go out and do some shooting during these 4 seasons. All right, so let's start with the spring. So this doesn't look like spring probably, but this is the first plant, the first new life that I see, and it comes actually in February up in Michigan here. And now you guys are in the same general kind of environment that I'm in, so everything that I'm showing you today, you can find in your areas where you live. Now, this is a skunk cabbage. It's called a spathe, and you can see right down in here where my camera's pointing. It's coming through the ice. Now, these little guys that are coming through that ice actually have a built-in heating system inside of the plant, and it actually melts the ice so that it can get up through the ice. And inside of that spathe is actually a little oval thing which has little tiny flowers on it, and so that protects that. that flower that's inside of there. But it's real interesting how this thing develops, and it's kind of exciting because we're going through winter, which is, I'm going to show you some really cool things that you can photograph in winter, but we're getting anxious for spring and starting to shoot new subjects that are going to pop in spring. So these guys will be the first life that I see, and it happens in February, and it kind of gets the juices flowing for the spring. Now, the first thing I start to shoot is really the buds that are on the trees. And if you watch the tree buds in the spring, and this is only going to be for a very short time because those buds they'll spring out into full-size leaves. But you get a little short window that you got to watch them real carefully as the buds start to pop. And you'll see these little formations that are coming out of those buds. And there's very artistic creations that are happening when those buds are popping. But again, you want to get them just as the bud is starting to open up and these little formations are just starting to come out of those buds. And you'll get some really cool shots. And they're easy to shoot. I use backgrounds a lot of times behind them because of the fact there's so much clutter. And you'll see in other pictures as I go how I'm using backgrounds and that behind these things. And sometimes, like in this case, I'll put some kind of a creative post-processing like filters on there to make it look a little bit more artistic. This is a Morton Arboretum outside of Chicago. I was doing a workshop there, and this is springtime. And as you can see, there's just some little hint of leaves that are popping out of those buds on that tree there. And I got some really nice shots of these very interesting formations that were coming out of those buds. Really cool stuff. So these are very artistic, and they're very most people look at it and they go, wow, that's really cool looking. And it's things that people don't think about going out to shoot. And it's such a simple subject, but it's very cool. You get some really cool compositions from it. And that's the end of a bud on the end of a branch right there. You can see how it's popping out of there. That's just, and again, this is when you want to do it right when the buds are opening. You get that really cool little formations that come out, because once these leaves open up, it's just branches with leaves. It's not that interesting, but it's the interesting formations as they come out of that bud. All right, so spring leaves. Now, this is something I didn't know, but I've learned, these are things that I've learned over the years of shooting and throughout the 4 seasons, that in the springtime, the young maple saplings, when the leaves come out, they are actually a yellow color. And then they'll actually turn to a green as you get into the warmer months and the summer months, they'll be green. But in this very early stages of spring, they're actually yellow. And I had no idea this happened, but one morning I'm out there walking through the swamp where there's some of these maple saplings, and I saw these leaves. There was probably a dozen of these little yellow leaves on those skunk cabbage leaves. And I'm like, wow, this is cool. Here, these leaves are yellow when they come out of those little saplings. They're not green, they're yellow, and then they'll turn to green. But when I show this image to people, they assume that this was like a fall shot because the leaf is a fall color, but it's actually spring. And the same with little saplings of oak trees. The leaves will actually come out a reddish color when they're first expanding out of those buds, and eventually they'll turn to green colors. Spring fiddleheads. I always look forward to go out and shooting the fiddleheads. They're actually the sprouts that come out of the ground that create the ferns that we see in the woods. And they're very cool little guys. And they're very low to the ground, so they're not easy to shoot. You got to get down real low. As you can see, I use backgrounds behind it because of the clutter. So I want to clean up that background. So I use backgrounds behind my subjects. And this is one that I found the two fiddleheads facing each other. And at the time, I didn't have any background, so I actually used skunk cabbage leaves. I took one of the skunk cabbage leaves and I positioned it and cradled them in behind there to clean up the clutter that was behind. Now, as those fiddleheads start to expand and they grow up taller, as you can see, they're much taller now. I'll place my background behind it, and then I can get a nice clean shot with those backgrounds behind it. And you'll get all these really interesting formations as they're starting to unfurl, from that tight coil that they start with. And you'll get all these cool little formations. This one here, I didn't use a background. I actually let the leaves in the background and soften them out. So all these are just unfurling that are coming out of the ground. They create artistic designs, and they're very cool. You'll get all kinds of cool creations And again, this is early spring when they're starting to sprout. You'll have to watch. I go out to the woods on a regular basis because they'll be at different stages. So these are a little further along than the ones I showed you earlier where they're in a tighter coil, but they'll start to create a larger formation. And that's another time. So you got different times you can photograph them as they're expanding. This is one that's just in my backyard, and I just put a background behind it and photograph that fern. All right, dandelions, another one that is they're everywhere. Dandelions are in your yards, unless you're really good at weeding, putting the weed stuff down to keep them from coming up. Fields are full of dandelions, and typically you're going to get the yellow flower that comes out, but once the yellow flower is done, you get the seed head, and the seed head is what we're after. Those are very interesting. So the seed heads, what I like to do is take a standard dandelion head and then start pulling off the seeds. And as you pull the seeds off, you start to expose the inner parts of the workings of the seed head. And then I will actually set up my clamp. It's got a stake on the end that stakes into the ground, and then at the top there's a clamp, and then I'll put a dandelion in there, and I'll take tweezers, and I'll take little tweezers, and I'll start pulling off the dandelions, and I'll create different formations on these leaves. So like this. So I've pulled away all the dandelion seeds all around the outside and just left these sitting up here. So that's a very artistic image, just with a simple subject like a dandelion seed head. And you can just play, you could, expose that center part, show it, and get in really close. You can do all kinds of interesting designs with these things. There's so many different things you can do by just plucking those little seeds out of there and creating all kinds of artistic formations. On the grass next to my driveway here, I'll get the camera down real low, and we'll photograph the grass with the dew on it. So on dewy mornings, I like to go out there, get the camera down there and photograph the grass. And I'll usually wait till the sun gets up above the houses behind me, and the sun will light up the grass and creates these orbs. You can see these little circles here. Those are little orbs, we call them. And what I do is I focus on maybe one of the drops that is kind of in the foreground, one or two of the drops I'll focus on, and then I'll use a real small f-stop, like a 2.8. And all you'll get in focus is this little area where the dewdrop is, and then you'll get this blur in the background, and it'll also create these orbs for you in the background. Now here's Kim. She was in one of my workshops, and she was doing this same effect, and this is the shot that she took on that morning. It's fun to do. Just get down. You can just do this in your yard. The Mayapples are another one that start to pop up in the spring. I love shooting the Mayapples, and they're again very low to the ground when they start to pop out, and you'll shoot them through the different stages of their life as you go through the spring. But you can see their leaves as it pops out of the ground. There's leaves that are all kind of packed together. And they will expand and open up as it gets older. The plant starts to grow, and this is a shot of the kind of this thing is only probably 4 inches, 5 inches tall, and these leaves are kind of packed together at that point. But you get this really nice colors in there that you can see there as it's starting to sprout up on the ground. Here's another real close up of those folds of leaves that are over top of each other, and then once they expand and open up, they will create like an umbrella. So it's like a large umbrella, as you can see here. And now this is another stage of their life that you can photograph and create nice art out of them. So I'll get the camera directly over top. And sometimes I might have some gaps in there that you can see through, and I'll clear the leaves at the bottom so that is just the kind of the dark dirt, so it comes out kind of black down there. But I'll get in there real tight, fill the frame with these things, and create some pretty cool images from these Mayapple leaves. You can do all kinds of different compositions, and you can do some different post-processing to make them look more creative. And this is a group of 3 that were tightly packed together, and it rained that night, and you've got all those nice collection of raindrops on the leaves. All right, so now we get into the summertime, and I will go back into the swampy areas, the wet areas where the skunk cabbage are, and I will photograph the skunk cabbage leaves. Now they'll fill up the whole area of the areas around the swampy areas where I have parks where we have different types of environments with little swampy areas and dry areas and fields and woods and all that. But around the swampy areas, you'll have all these skunk cabbages. And as you can see, they really, really fill in the ground. So you can't see the ground anymore. It's just solid leaves. Now, if you notice, there's leaves that are the darker green, and then you'll see some light colors. That's the early morning sunlight that's lighting up those leaves, all right? And you want to do this at the early morning, right when the sun is at the horizon, because it's kind of what we call backlighting. So it's backlighting the leaves and creating really interesting patterns in the leaves. So I will be facing the sun, kind of looking towards the sunlight, and you'll get this really cool veins, patterns that are going to pop out of those leaves. If you look at the leaf without the backlighting, it looks nothing like that. But once that sun hits the backside, it lights up every little vein in there, and it just really, really pops. And so you get some really cool images from those backlighting of the leaves. And I also use those leaves a lot for backgrounds. So you saw me use it on that yellow maple leaf. Those yellow maple leaves landed on those skunk cabbage leaves. You saw me use the skunk cabbage leaf behind the fiddleheads. And now I found this little shell, this little snail shell, and placed it on that skunk cabbage leaf. So skunk cabbage leaves are nice to shoot for those abstract backlit images, but also use them as nice backgrounds. And then you head to the beach. Now, we have beaches where I live. I live near Lake St. Clair, and then also live near a lake called Stony Creek. And so I will go out and shoot feathers mainly, but these are images that you can also get if you're down in Florida or out where the ocean is, where you can shoot shells. This is actually at Carlsbad, California, that I was shooting these. And I don't like to just shoot a single leaf, or I'm sorry, a single shell. I don't find that all that interesting, just shooting a single shell. So I avoid those. And what I'm looking for is more of shells that are kind of together. So it creates an interesting pattern. And what I found interesting about this group here and the next couple I'll show you is that you'll see the backside of some of the shells, but then on this side here, you're seeing the inside of the shell, but it's been filled in with the sand. So the sand blew in and filled in, and all you're seeing now is just the edge of the shell around the outside. So I thought that was a pretty cool. This is 3 shells. What I liked about these 3 is I liked this one here is broken in half. This one's got some stuff missing, and then we have a full size one here. So again, a little more interesting than just a single shell by incorporating a few shells together. And then here's another one that I found where you saw where the sand is filled in, and all you're seeing is kind of the outside edges of the shell. And I find that very interesting. This is a close-up of that last one. And what's interesting here is that you have a large shell and then a smaller shell inside of that large shell. And over here, you've got 3 shells. You've got the one on the outside, you've got the blue colored one here, and then this gold color one inside of that. So it's very interesting how these shells have kind of worked themselves into each other. And then you have the sand coming in there and filling in just enough so that you can just see the outside of the shells. So very interesting subjects. Feathers on beach, though this is a Stony Creek near my house, and we have obviously all types of shorebirds that are hanging out, and they leave their feathers on the sand, and so there's lots of opportunities to create interesting images with these feathers on the sand. So this is the feather that I avoid. This is not a very interesting feather. It's just got perfectly aligned veining, perfectly aligned edges, and it's a boring feather, what I call a boring feather. So what I'm looking for is feathers that have some character to them, something like this, where you see some separation in that veining, and there's actually an artistic flow in the veins, how they created. So you have this nice S curve right here. You got a little V on the end of this one here, and you've got this guy over here kind of overlaps over top of this one. So it's a very interesting design that has been created on the sand there. So those are the feathers that I'm looking for, not the standard looking feathers that are all perfectly aligned. I want the ones that are kind of unique. So on that same beach, I found this one right here. And so that's a very interesting feather. It amazes me how all the veining of that has created an artistic flow naturally like that. It's just Mother Nature's art, which is really cool. And then I found another really nice one there, and that's this one here. And it's just weird how that thing formed like that, but it's just a very cool shot. And this one I actually shot in Iceland. I was in Iceland actually in February. Went there to see the Northern Lights, which we didn't see because it didn't happen. But anyways, we went to this black sand beach, and here I find this feather there on the black sand beach. And I actually just shot this with my phone, my camera phone. And there's another one. This one I hear I added a little of a artistic, application and post-processing to it. So that's another thing. Again, feathers are really, really fun to shoot, and there's all kinds of stuff on the beach you can do. Spider webs, another one that we have a blast shooting is going out into the fields and searching for the spider webs. Get some really, really great images with spider webs. I usually find them by I'll start out in the field again at daybreak, early morning, when the sun's just coming up. And that's usually when you're going to get the least amount of wind or no wind. So it makes it easier to shoot these because you don't want to shoot these when they're blowing back and forth. But I'll be heading towards the sunlight, going from west to east. And that will light up all those spider webs. I mean, when the sun gets up, you can't see those spider webs, but when it's backlighting them at early morning, you're going to see all these hundreds of webs in some of these fields. I'll find hundreds of these webs. And so I'll get in there and shoot these, but really, really cool patterns and designs. This one here, I got out of my van and I was heading out into the field, and this thing was probably 30 yards from my van. It was up really high too. And again, the light from behind was making it glow. Very cool. But you get these kind of strings of pearls, when you get the dew on the web, it gets all these really, really nice little strings of pearls. You'll get some really cool stuff. So they're very artistic images of a simple subject like a spider web. And then sometimes you'll capture them like this, where they've created a nice web between, like the stems, really interesting. And then I'll come at it from different angles too, because most people just shoot straight on the web, like the images I've just showed you. But if you want to create something a little bit different, a little unique, come in at a side angle and use a small f-stop. And so you'll get the center part in focus on the center. And then with a, 5.6, 6.3 smaller f-stop number, it'll cause this kind of blur on the outside from here and then a blur on the backside. So you'll get a really unique, something a little different than what everybody else is shooting. And it's kind of how I would like to kind of expand your portfolio, not just have the standard straight on spiderweb shots, but from different angles that create different looks. So there's another one, this one's shooting into the very side of the webs, and you can see I've captured this area where it's kind of dipped down right in here, but then you can also see some of the back part of it there, how it dips down in the back. And again, using a smaller f-stop, so you get this in focus just in the front. Again, maybe a 4.5, 5.6, 6.3, and then you get that nice blur in the background. And this one is a very interesting one because it was a really heavy, foggy morning. And I just positioned this little section of the web. I focused on this area right in here, right up in here is where I focused. And then with the small f-stop again, I don't know exactly which one. It could have been a 3.5, 4.5, 5.6. It created this weird blur. It went from focus, and then as it goes out to the edges, it starts to create this weird blur. And that in the background is actually the sun, early morning sun. And the reason why it's not so bright and blowing out the image is because it's a heavy, heavy fog on that morning. And it was just barely peeking through that fog. And so I thought, that'd be kind of cool. Position the sun right behind the spider web. Weird fungus. So I always just go out in the woods and just walk around and explore, looking for things. This is how I learn about all the cool subject matter that's out there. And one day I'm in a field walking and I happen to see this old tree trunk. And I've been by this tree trunk, never seen this weird fungus here. but I thought, wow, what the heck is that? I'd never seen it before. I thought that's pretty cool. And I didn't know what it was, but when I posted it online on Facebook, someone said it was called pixel or pixie fungus or pixie fungi or something. And it's just really, really cool. It looks like little trumpets that are popping out of that mossy stuff there. So yeah, I did a vertical and a horizontal, but again, you just never know when you go out in the woods, you're going to come across some unusual thing, and it creates a very interesting image. Summertime leaves. So as I said, I have some swampy areas near me. These are actually not so much swamps as they are vernal ponds. And what happens is in the late winter, when all the snow's melting and we get the heavy rains in the spring, it floods these low areas in the woods. And they typically will dry up usually by mid-June, July. But there has been a couple years where we had a lot of rain through the summer and it actually stayed wet all summer long, and it created this little lake in the woods. And what happens is we get high winds and the leaves get blown out of the trees from the high winds and they lay on the water. And so I'll put on my knee-high boots, as you can see, and I'll walk through there. And that bottom is a clay base. It's a hard clay. That's why the water doesn't sink into the earth. It has to evaporate because it won't sink into the earth. So when I walk in there, it's not like a typical swampy where you would sink into the mud. No, I'm walking like on concrete in there. It's really hard. I find all kinds of cool things to shoot floating on the top of that water. So this is a maple leaf that fell, and this is summertime. So you look at that and you go, wow, that leaf looks like it was a fall leaf. No, it's actually a summer leaf, but it's turned to a fall color. Now, the green color in the water, you're looking at that green, you think, how come the water's green? Well, it's because it's a reflection of the green leaves in the trees overhead. So you get this really cool fall colored leaf, and then you get the nice green color in the water. And this is a group of leaves I thought was a really nice little group of leaves that were collected together in the water. And then the blue color of the water, that's where there's an opening in the trees, in the canopy of leaves, there's an opening, and it's a blue sky. And so the blue sky now is reflecting in the water, creating that blue color. And then if you get a cloudy day and it's exposed to the sky and it's cloudy, you'll get the white reflections of the cloud, and it makes the water look like it's mercury. Now, those three leaves actually fell just like you see them. And that just amazes me because they're attached down here by a branch. There's three leaves and they're attached to a branch. But two of the leaves, you can see the top side, which is green, and this is the back side of the leaf. And for whatever reason, this one leaf flipped over to the back side. So it created a really nice contrast of this leaf against the green leaves down below. And I thought, how interesting is that created itself just like that. And then if I go out there real early in the morning before the sunlight gets up and starts hitting the water will be a black color. So I've got green colors, I got blue colors, got white colors or mercury looking water, and I got black water. So again, very, very fun. If you have any swampy areas out by in the woods, check them out, because if you get those leaves falling on it, you'll have some fun shooting those leaves. And then you want to look up in the canopy of the trees because there are shadows that are happening up there. So this photographer here, I spotted it's hard for you to see probably, but there's a leaf right here with the shadow of another leaf right in the middle of that leaf. And so I pointed it out, and so he's photographing that. But here's a very interesting image I found. It's a sycamore tree. I was walking underneath it. I'm looking up and I saw this shadow right here on this big, large leaf here, a shadow. And I thought, that's pretty cool. And then I look up farther and there's the leaf that's creating the shadow. Now we talk about backlighting, right? Well, this leaf here is being backlit by the sun, just like those skunk cabbage leaves were. That's why you see the veining pop. This leaf is being backlit. That's why it's that green color. And then it's created, and by this being backlit and being lighter, it really shows off that dark shadow there. And then the leaves in the background are not being backlit, so they turn into a darker color. So that's a really, really cool image. And again, that would only happen at a certain time of day, because as that sun starts to move over a little bit more, you've totally lost that shadow there. So it just happened to be in the right place at the right time, looking up. But I'm always looking up into the tree canopy because you'll sometimes find interesting things. Now, this actually wasn't shot up here. This was shot down in Florida, but it's a I forget bird of paradise, giant bird of paradise leaves. I mean, really, really tall, like 15 feet tall. And I look up there and I saw this cool shadows that are happening in this highlighting that was happening. So there's two leaves here, one in front of the other. This leaf in the front here, you can see is being shaded, so it stays dark like that. And there's a gap there. And between the gap, you can see the second leaf that was behind it. Now, if you notice those little white areas, that's a gap in that leaf. And between those gaps, the sun is shining through and creating the highlighting that's on the front leaf here. So each one of those gaps, you can see how the light is coming through there and highlighting that front leaf. So that's a really interesting image. And this is cottonwood. Actually, these leaves were turned 180 degrees. I actually turned it so that they were upright, but they were actually facing downward. But this little leaf, this little baby leaf was attached. It was kind of stuck to this bigger leaf. And with the sun backlighting, it created a little shadow here. And then also you can see how the veins pop out with the backlighting. Frogs, they're so much fun to shoot, the frogs in the summertime. So I go back to the swamp, that vernal pond, and there's tons of frogs that live around the vernal pond. Now, frogs are a little tricky because most of the time as you're walking the edge of the swamp, they will see you come in and they will jump in. So like 10 feet away from you, you'll hear them plopping into the water. But every once in a while you'll get lucky and you'll get frogs that'll let you actually come right up to them. And they must assume they're camouflage where you can't see them, but you can get really close to some of them. So like this one here, I was actually directly over top of him as he's looking out of the water through the water at me. And you'll see them in there, just kind of heads just poking out of the water. And again, it does take some time and patience because most of them will go underwater or they'll jump off the edge into the water. This is a little wood frog. He was jumped up on time an old stump that was covered in moss, and he was on the floor of the woods, and he saw me coming and he jumped up there and he allowed me to get my tripod in real close and photograph him. And that was actually at a botanical garden somewhere. I don't know which one, but he was just sitting on the edge of a little pond and he's sitting there real nice. Now, I also like to go to the ponds that have duckweed. If you ever go to a pond, you'll see all that green stuff. It's called duckweed, and it'll fill in the pond, just totally fill the pond in sometimes. And those frogs will start peeking their heads out, and I just love seeing those little heads peeking out of that duckweed. So yeah, that's a fun thing to do. Here's one. He's got the duckweed all over his head as he comes up. And this guy was at another one at a botanical garden. That's some kind of a tropical plant in the water. And he's just sitting right on top of there. So those are fun to shoot. Now, the seed heads from the goat's beard flower are popping in the summer. They're like a dandelion head, but they're like 10 times bigger than a dandelion head. They're huge, and you can have so much fun. And these are another one where you can pull off the seeds and create different designs and come up with all kinds of cool images from those things. So this is where I got in real close on the seed head, and it looks like fireworks going off. But these seeds are really, really cool, and even closer. So you can, come in at a distance away, shoot them, and then as you move in closer, you get totally different compositions. And you get to see more of the design and the details in those seed heads. Very cool. And here's one where I took off the seeds, but showed how the center part works with the seeds coming out of the center part of the goat's beard. So you get to see a little of that. And then there was some early morning sunlight kind of highlighting these tops. Shot this, probably an f8, got this in focus, but blurred out the background so that it didn't get too cluttery back there. And again, another composition, different thing, put that center part of the seed head down in the left or the right corner here, and then just let those seeds flow out all around. But they're really big puffs. And again, these are all things that only last for a very short time. And over the years, I've learned all the different seasons and when to be in the fields at the certain times of each season so that you capture these things, because they'll only last for a very short time and then they're gone. You have to wait till the next year to shoot them again. And here's another one that, again, a little bit different composition of this guy. created a nice little composition and then added some backgrounds on there in the post-processing to make it look a little more artsy. And this is one that I mirrored. If you notice, the left side is mirrored on the right side. So everything on the left side you see is also on the right side. So this is a filter that's in Smart Photo Editor. It's called Reflection 180. And it'll actually take the one half and mirror it onto the other half, and it creates a really, really cool, interesting alien looking. Some people thought it was a spider, some kind of crab. But yeah, it's just the goat's beard seed head that's mirrored. So that come out pretty cool. Pine cones, another one I like to shoot pine cones. I like to shoot them in the branches, find some kind of a nice little composition. This one I like because it had the new growth coming out here and it had a little pine cone sticking out of the side. And another little shot of a pine cone. And here's some new pine cones that are just starting to sprout in the center there. So you can get them, again, different stages of life. And then you can find them on the ground. They're all over the ground. So this was an old tree trunk that there was a lot of pine cones around the base. And so I just kind of scattered some around the tree trunk. Some were already there, but then I filled in some gaps with some of the cones. And here's another one, same thing. I love the texture and the interesting design of that tree trunk, and then just place some of those cones around there. So those are fun to shoot. This one here was a little cone that was kind of buried in the grasses and and all the needles, and you can see these green leaves that were growing up around it. So you get this nice contrast of the green leaves against the earth tones of the background. And these are two pine cones that I placed on that old dead tree trunk. Just position them there. And these are tamarack cones. We have a tamarack tree in one of the parks near my house, and this is the first time that I've seen the little cones sprouting out of it, so that was pretty cool. So get some really nice images of the cones. Tree trunks, another one that are fun to shoot. These are old trunks that were trees that the park system cut down, and they loaded them up in this one area of a field. And on this one tree trunk right here, if you notice down at here, I'm always looking for things that have interesting lines. As you can see, a lot of my images, there's all kinds of lines and interesting things. But I saw these lines right in this base of this tree trunk here. And so just got in there and photographed those. They're actually the chainsaw created those lines. So if you look here, it's where the chainsaw dug in and created those interesting lines. And so it's an abstract, but it's very cool. It's chainsaw art. This is a Bristol cone pine tree from out at 11,000 feet in the Eastern Sierra Mountains, and it had a really, really interesting trunk that had all kinds of curls and swerves in it. This area here is only about 4 inches by 6 inches. It's a very small little area, but you can see how much is happening in that little 4 by 6 inch area. And then out on Georgia coast, Jekyll Island has the boneyard, it's called. It's all these old dead trees along the sand. And I've got my tripod set up because I found this cool little formation. And again, these are just nice abstracts that you find in tree trunks. I find all kinds of interesting things to photograph. So I love looking for any lines, any designs, interesting things. Now we're back into the ferns. We were shooting the fiddleheads in the springtime, but now the ferns have expanded in their full size. And so now we got these big giant ferns. All right. So I sometimes will just capture a large area of these ferns with all kinds of interesting design and curls and neat things going on. And then in this case here, it's a backlit, one fern that was up in the air that was being backlit by the sun. And I liked it because it was still kind of unfurling, and you can see the little coils here, little tiny coils that were still in the, hasn't opened completely, but there was sun that was backlighting, creating that highlighting on that, on the leaves. And this is a maidenhair fern, just really cool design, how it's all formed into different directions. And these are all this is in the woods by my house that I shot it. And again, just different compositions. Come in and photograph different areas of these ferns, different sections where they're overlapping and creating cool designs. But I usually like to find them where they have the curls happening like that. I don't like to just see just straight ferns going out. That's not interesting to me. I'm looking for more characteristics in the ferns. This is one that's kind of curled up, as you can see. Whoops. It just starts out here and it just curls into itself. And then this last one of the ferns, I just turned that into a kind of a backlit black and white look in filter that I used in Smart Photo Editor. All right, dead leaves. This is another thing that I found when I would travel through the woods. I would find trees that had blown down from high winds. And when they blow down, the leaves are green because when they were standing and alive, the leaves were green. But those leaves will start to decay and turn brown, and they'll curl up into interesting artistic formations. So you get branches sometimes. Sometimes just a big branch will fall out. And again, as you can see, these leaves are curling into an interesting composition and they've turned brown. And I'll photograph those. I'll go through all these different sections of these branches or trees and I'll look for compositions. So here's one here that I liked. And again, just a very unique, different look of leaves. And these, I call this group hug because if you can see, this guy's hugging this one and this one's got a hug on that one and this one's hugging this one. So it's called group hug. And so you can find a lot of different compositions and artistic designs of these leaves. And again, these are summertime things you can do. And then fall comes, and now we're into fall. Sumac is one of the first leaves that I find, sumac bushes, that are starting to turn red in the parks by me. They're one of the first to start turning. And this is a beautiful, beautiful leaf where it has the beautiful red, but also the green, kind of green veining here. And so it creates a beautiful contrast to the reds and the greens. This is another leaf that is the very first leaf. I'm talking in September, I'm finding these on the ground. They're called large tooth aspen leaves. And the large tooth aspen are the first ones, other than those sumac, the actual large trees that I find will start to fall onto the ground. And then you'll get out there some mornings where they're all cluttered together and maybe have some raindrops from the night before and it'll create those little patterns of leaves, or I'm sorry, raindrops on the leaves. And this is cottonwood. Cottonwood is another one that starts to fall early in September. And this is actually on a pond. And these cottonwood leaves just form just like you see them there. And the water head came into here creating a heart, just like the heart of the cottonwood leaves. So that was a pretty cool shot. And then I will again explore through the woods a little bit and find interesting things. Now there's these vines growing on the trees, which are from poison ivy. They're vines from poison ivy. And there's another one that's something oak vine or some kind of oak vine or something. But I'm using my macro lens here with a close-up filter, Nisi close-up filter, NISI close-up filter. And when you place that close-up filter on the front of the lens, the macro lens, it'll go to a 2-to-1 magnification. So it'll get you in super close. And I'm actually photographing this little tendril, I call it. It's coming off of the vine here. That's my thumb right there. That's my thumb. So you can see that thing is the size of my thumbnail. That's how tiny that is. But with that close-up lens on the front of the macro lens, I can get in real close and photograph that little guy. Milkweed seed pods. These are one of my favorites in the fall. I love going out there where the milkweeds are popping. Just go out into open fields. You should find them. And as you can see in the background behind me, there is just tons and tons of these milkweed pods, and the seeds are starting to pop out of them. And again, these are all things that you got to time it just right, because once those seeds leave the pod, then you've lost your shot. So you have to be aware. And I've learned throughout the years of shooting all the different seasons where to be at the right places so you can get all these great images. So the seed pods open up and these little seeds with the hairs start popping out and they just make creative, beautiful creative art. And you'll find them in all different formations, different designs. You can get in real close so you can see the seeds just kind of popping out. And this one here, you can see the seeds are encased in there. And some of them will look like just a big old mesh of cotton sticking out the end. And this I got in real close. It was a dewy morning and came in real close on this one and captured the dew on the hairs in there. Teasel is another one I like to shoot. They are big, spiky type plants, and they will actually be green in the summertime, and they will actually produce flowers on some of these. And then as they die in the fall and turn brown, you get them where they'll have these little cool little coils that are coming off, little strands of coils that are coming off the sides of them. And I'll use my backgrounds behind them because you can see they're in very cluttered conditions sometimes. Sometimes you'll find them in open areas, but sometimes they're in clutter. And I'll use backgrounds and you'll get stuff like that. But this is what I'm talking about, these little coil things that'll come off and they'll create all this artistic design. Very cool. Most of them look like this one here, where they just come out on the side and just curl up. But then I was able to capture this one with it where it had all this interesting coils. Very, really artistic. Again, Mother Nature makes the best art. We just got to find it and photograph it. Mushrooms, fall season's mushroom time, right? Matter of fact, Madeline Island has a mushroom workshop they do in September, and they find these tiny, tiny, tiny little mushrooms, and they shoot them, you know, with high magnification to get them. But yeah, they do a mushroom workshop up there in September. Now, when I go out into the woods in the fall looking for the mushrooms, you got to be quick again, just like all this stuff, because it's, you know, the animals are deer are going to come and eat them and that. And so they only last for a very short time. But they're always off of the dead tree trunks. Any dead tree trunks can produce these mushrooms. And so I'll get in there, get in nice and close, and then photograph these mushrooms. And this one was actually a tree trunk laying on the ground. And when I originally saw it, I was looking at the other side of these mushrooms, and then I decided to take the log and lift it up so that I could get the underside of the mushrooms. And that's how I created that, by lifting that log up, exposing the underside, which I found much more interesting because the design on the underside is way more interesting than the top, and then just laid the log back down. And this is real typical of dead standing trees, where you'll get these mushrooms that'll just kind of pop out of the side of these dead trees. And these are some on the ground, which was rare because most of the time I see them coming out of tree trunks, but this actually was coming off from the ground. And more dead tree trunk mushrooms. And this is the underside of a large mushroom that was growing out of the ground as well. And it had tipped over, so I don't know if a deer kicked it or knocked it over, but this was the underside of the mushroom, got in real close and captured a nice close-up of it. And this is some kind of a weird fungus that's growing off of an old dead tree trunk. And then birch trees. I love birch trees. I love to put leaves in birch trees. So you can see I've got a little leaf that I positioned in this birch tree right here. Got my camera set up. And there it is. Just like I set it in the birch tree. So in the fall is typically when I do this, when the colors are fall colors. This image here is a Bradford pear leaf that I put in that tree trunk, and it actually made it on the cover of Nature Photographer magazine. So here, a simple little concept, putting a leaf in a birch tree makes it on a cover of a magazine. Little fall maple leaf in this birch tree. And I like to find the ones usually have a lot of curls, a lot of interesting design in them. And this one here, I did the artistic post-processing in Smart Photo Editor, created something a little more artistic with it. Foxtail is another one that you can shoot. And you can see there's so much stuff to shoot other than flowers and bugs. There's so many cool things to create art with. Foxtails, you'll see them, they look like a foxtail. That's why you call them foxtails. So they're all over in the field sometimes. And sometimes you'll find them in certain fields and then it won't be in other fields. So you do have to do some searching. And I'm lucky, I've got 4 parks within 20 minutes of my home. So I have a really, really nice, unique environments in all these parks, different environments that I can shoot in. But that's foxtail right there. And those are flowers in the background, the old seed heads of a flower that the petals fell off. and created a beautiful fall image with those foxtails in front of those flower heads. And then here's another one. It's a vertical shot now. The same foxtails you just saw, but this is the vertical shot. And these are foxtails over top of, there's the, what I just showed you earlier, the teasel. You can see a little bit of flowers on that teasel. Frost, another one that I love. We're getting our frost now. Not heavy frost, real light frost right now, but it's going to start getting some heavier frost here in November, hopefully. But I love going out in the woods where all the leaves are and photographing the frost on the leaves. The frost adds so much character onto those leaves, makes them so much more interesting. And I looked for the ones that have some contrast. So this is a morning when the frost was starting to melt. And for whatever reason, it started to melt off the leaves out around it. But these two leaves remained frosty. So it created a nice contrast of the two leaves against the areas around the outside. I'm usually looking for something interesting that usually some kind of a design pattern in the leaves that creates a nice pattern. And then the frost just adds a nice element on top of them. This one here, some people would call it hoarfrost. You can see how the frost is kind of sticking up on the edges. This is actually in a Boy Scout fire pit. The Boy Scout had a fire pit at one of the parks that they used. And I found that old burnt wood there with all the frost on it. And that leaf that you see there, I actually found in the field. And I picked up the leaf and I brought it over there and set it on that wood. So it created, again, a nice contrast of the colors against the black and white of the tree trunk. This one here, I found it just like you see it. This looks like it may have set it up because if you notice in the gap right here, there's a peace sign with the veining of the leaves underneath. But yeah, I actually found that just like you see it. And again, always fascinated how these things form naturally out there in the field. And this one here, I turned in kind of like a artistic kind of black and white. It's like a foxtail, but these oak leaves had fallen over top of the foxtail, and then it's got frost, all covered in frost. And this one here, the back leaf is a sycamore leaf, and you can see it's covered in frost. And that feather is a crow's feather that I found laying on the grass near the area where that leaf was. So I picked up this feather and I brought it over and I placed it on that sycamore leaf. And it created a beautiful contrast against the yellow color of the leaf. Now this image won highly honored in the Winland Smith Rice International Competition. And again, it's just a simple crow's feather on a frosty sycamore leaf. Now we get into winter. So a lot of people put their equipment away. They assume there's not much to shoot in the winter, but there's a lot to shoot in the wintertime. So I'm 12 months out of the year, I'm out there shooting. Now it's not as pleasant, obviously, shooting in the winter as it is shooting in the spring and summer and fall. But if you dress warm enough, it actually works out just fine. All right, now the first thing that happens in my area is in December. Now, this all is dependent on how much cold we get in December. And this can happen in the second week of December. Sometimes it doesn't happen until January, but typically normal winter, we would get some cold in the about second week in December where it'll start to freeze the edge of these little streams, these little creeks. And in this area that I'm in right now, there's actually 3 of these little creeks that run kind of parallel to each other. And along the edge, as you can see, there's ice forming right on the edges. And that's when you want to shoot these abstracts, is because as the ice first forms is when you get the best abstracts. And as it builds layer on top of layer of ice, it loses all those abstracts. So I will be out there. You always want to be using your zoom lens because obviously I don't want to walk on the ice. I'll break right through. So I want to stand on the land, use a zoom lens to zoom in on these things. And as you can see here, these are the streams, the creeks with ice forming on the edges. And what I get is really cool ice abstracts. This looks like some kind of alien with gills. This one here is actually, you can see the ice is so thin that there's still areas that haven't froze together yet. That's why you see those black holes. That's how thin that ice is. It's just starting to form. And what's happening is when the water is rippling through this area, it's creating little areas where it's not freezing because the water ripples through there and keeps it from freezing. But eventually, with enough cold, it'll freeze over. But there's all kinds of cool designs. And again, this is at the very, very first stage of the ice. Because again, once it thickens, you lose all these patterns and all these cool stuff. And then there's puddles that form in the woods. And I'll run across these little puddles. And the puddle will skim over the ice on the top, and then the water underneath will suck into the ground, and you'll just have this thin, thin layer of ice on the top. And this was shot in that puddle right there. That is a very cool abstract. And then this is a 2-track road, goes through one of the parks, and you can see there's low rutted areas where the rains fill up those rutted areas, and then it freezes, and there's always leaves on top of that ice or in the ice. And so I'll photograph. You'll get these, again, cool designs in the ice that you can see all the cool designs that are happening, and these leaves will fall on top of that ice, and I'll photograph the leaves on there. There's a little close-up of that one. I didn't put the leaf there, it was just there. And then as the ice thickens on the streams and the puddles and that, and you lose a lot of those cool patterns, I'll head out to a Stony Creek Lake, and I'm out there at Stony Creek Lake right now. And so you'll see there's leaves locked in the ice, and there's just this one area of the lake where the leaves blow into the water, and then they freeze in there. And I get all these cool leaf images locked in the ice. This one's my favorite right here. This is my favorite. That's a giant sycamore leaf locked in the ice. Now you can see there's a melting pattern that's happening right there. This was on a 50-degree day in March. We still had ice and still solid enough to walk on, and it went to 50 degrees that day. Well, it was starting to melt the ice. And so this leaf was encased under the layer of ice. And then as the sunlight was hitting it, it was melting the ice over top and creating these gaps so you could see the leaf in here and cool little patterns and designs and lines in here. And I shaded it with my diffuser so it wouldn't be so bright on there. And then on that same day, I find this one here. It's a heart-shaped cottonwood leaf that was locked underneath the ice. And as you can see, it's starting to melt right here. So it exposes the leaf underneath there, and you get this kind of shadow effect of the outline of the leaf, and you get some dark color of the stem underneath there. Now this this leaf here, when I shot it, it was early in the morning, and 5 hours later, I came back to see how it looked, how the melting, and that whole center was completely melted away. So all it looked like was just a leaf laying on the ice. It had totally melted away. So again, it was a timing thing, just being in the right place at the right time. But you'll get all kinds of cool, little designs of leaves in the ice, creating nice artwork. And then at the edge of the lake, there's cottonwood or cattails are standing up. No, I'm not a big fan of shooting cattails, but I did shoot this and capture this. And in order to make it look a little more interesting, I created that in Smart Photo Editor. I used one of their creative filters to create the pattern on the background to make it look a little bit more interesting than just the cattails. I don't find them that interesting, but again, this came out pretty nice from that right there. A lot of times you can take a simple subject and with a little creative post-processing, make it look pretty cool. Get the snowshoes on, head in the woods. And now we've got beech trees that still have the leaves on them. If you notice all the trees in the background, there's no leaves on them, but the beech trees will actually hold their leaves through the wintertime and then drop in the spring and new leaves will come out. So I will go and photograph after a snow, capture these leaves, and you'll see the leaves will kind of catch some of the snow on the leaves in the background there. And the white is the snow on the ground in the background, so it just turns to a white. And then I'll find these dead tree trunks, and underneath the bark of some of these, they'll have woodworms, I think they call them woodworms, and they create patterns in the wood of the tree trunk. And look at the design. They ate through the trunk of the tree, creating these little roads. That's like a little city there with roads. And so you get some pretty cool stuff on some of these old dead tree trunks with the, and you'll find them on the ground too. A lot of times I find old tree trunks on the ground. The bark has fallen off and exposes the little roads that the worms have created in the wood. And then you'll find sometimes old decayed tree trunks. I mean, they've really gotten to the point where they're totally decayed, starting to fall apart, and then get in there and capture a nice abstract of the decay in there. And when it snows, I like to get out there right after a fresh snow, because the oak leaves that are laying on the ground there, I'll capture these oak leaves where you just see the tips of the leaves kind of protruding out from the snow. And I think that's just so cool. I've got lots of shots of these leaves that are just kind of just angling out of the snow like you see there. And then there's some turkey tail on the side of this dead tree trunk, and it captures the snow on the top of the turkey tail, and then you get in there and photograph that. Again, so many things to photograph, and I have to tell you, there are so many things that I didn't include in this program that I have, because I thought it might get too long. And I haven't even included the stuff out west in the deserts, and the stuff in Florida and the tropical areas. I got so much more stuff. But because you guys live in the north, I wanted to cover all the northern stuff. Ice storms, another one. We get some ice storms that come through, and they produce cool images too. So this is some kind of a little bush that had these little red berries on it, and created this casing of ice over it from the ice storm. And you'll get the white snow in the background on the ground will create a nice background for you to get that white color back there. And I'll take black felt with me out into the field when I'm shooting these, because this is a rose bush. And because they're all so close and tangled together, I needed some kind of a background to eliminate the other branches. And so I put some black fleece behind it. And I like the black because it contrasts really well with the ice in the branch. Here's another one. That's a beech leaf. You remember I talked about the beech leaves? They're still on the trees. So I shot it with the snow on it in the last, couple shots ago, but now I've got ice that is frozen on the leaf and dripping off of the leaf. Another one, you can see how the ice is formed at the top, and then as it kind of like starts to melt, it just kind of runs down and then refreezes. So you get some lot of nice shots from ice storms. And this is just a spruce tree in my front yard that was totally encased in ice. And then my van has frost on the window. Now you can shoot the frost on the window. Now I got inside of the van shooting outward and captured all the cool little design of the frost. And this is another little pond at one of the parks near me. And I happen to be walking along, and I look out and I see all these bubbles at the edge of the ice. You can see right there, it's melted, but thousands and thousands of air bubbles on the bottom of the ice. So of course I got to get the zoom out, focus in, capture bubbles on the ice. All right, now this is our last slide. And this one here, you're kind of wondering, how did you get a red maple leaf during wintertime? Well, because I found the leaf in the fall, put it in my freezer, and when we had snow in the spruce tree in my backyard, I pulled the maple leaf out of the freezer, took it out, and put it in the spruce tree. I had seen a shot like this. I think it was in Colorado, where someone had shot a fall color leaf, and they have early up in the upper elevations, they get early snows, and sometimes it can happen in the fall. And so I saw a fall color leaf in a branch, similar to this, and I thought, how cool is that? I said, but I wouldn't be able to do that here because we don't get snowfall in that early when we have our fall color leaves. So I just saved that in my freezer, brought it out, and put it in this spruce tree when we had snow on the spruce tree. Okay, guys, so I have taken you through the 4 seasons, and you see there is a heck of a lot of stuff that you can shoot out there, other than flowers and bugs. So you create a lot of really cool art with all these subjects. But again, it took me many years to learn all the different seasons and all the different subject matter and when they came out, because again, these are all a timing thing. You got to be in the right places at the right time. And over the years, you learn where to be in each season and what's available to shoot. If you're interested, I have a macro photo club, has over 280 instructional videos, and it covers me in the field shooting about over 100 of the videos of me out in the field actually shooting a lot of this stuff, and has videos on post-processing, videos on equipment, and videos on composition. We have 2,800 members now from 29 countries. And we also have a Facebook group with about 1,500 of our members are on the Facebook group, and they share their images. They can ask questions and get help from people. And the lifetime membership, you only pay it one time, not like other video clubs where you got to pay a monthly fee or a yearly fee. It's only a one-time lifetime membership of $99 and you're done. Never have to pay again. You can reach the Macro Photo Club from tinylandscapes.com or mikemoats.com. And at the top of the page, you'll see links up there, and there'll be one that says Macro Photo Club. You'll also find all my images on there, and a lot of the subjects you saw today are on those images. And then I have my workshops that you can find on there too. Okay, Jeff, I'm going to stop my share and come back in. I'll be more than happy to hang around and answer any questions.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Mike. This is really quite interesting and gives me a lot of good ideas of what to shoot.
Oh, there's so much stuff out there.
Yeah, I really hadn't thought of a lot of those. I have done some, but not as many as you've gotten. So it's very inspirational, and I think a lot of people will have fun this winter, summer, spring, and fall shooting.
Yeah, so you can
anybody.
you can still go out there and shoot your flowers. I mean, obviously your
Yep.
spring flowers in the woods and the summer flowers, you can still shoot your bugs, but this gives you other opportunities, other things to go out and shoot so that you're not just shooting just flowers and bugs. There's so much more to shoot.
Yeah.
Mike,
Yeah,
I missed the last part of your, I went offline, my internet went out for a little bit there at the end. So I think I missed your contact information, but I had a couple of questions,
Mhm.
if that's okay.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had
Sure, go ahead.
one on technique and one on equipment.
Mhm.
On the technique side, do you always use natural light?
Yeah, yeah.
And
don't-
on the,
I don't use
and
any flash. No flash,
you never,
no
you
ring
never
lights.
do you use reflectors or anything?
Nope.
Just
Just the
natural
natural
light.
light. Yeah, and that goes for even when I'm shooting indoors. Like when I'm shooting indoors in my home in the winter or hot summer, I'm just using whatever light is available. I don't use any type of artificial lighting as far as flash or ring lights. Yeah.
So I noticed on the pictures that you had of your equipment, yourself and your equipment, on several of the pictures, I noticed that you used a focus rail. Do you ever do any focus stacking, or you just use that to be able to move things around?
No, I'm shooting everything at high f-stops, 22 to 32 on most of those images to get everything in focus. That's why I'm using backgrounds. Otherwise, I'd bring in all that clutter behind there. The one you saw, the focus rail, that was when I was shooting that poison ivy vine with the little tendril coming off of it, and I was shooting at a higher magnification. When you're in really, really close, if you have to move the camera in, for framing, back and forth for framing, it's hard to do with a tripod when you're in that close, because sometimes you only need a fraction, you have to move it. So the rail helps I actually use the rail more for framing the subject, moving the camera back and forth just slightly here and there just to get framing. But no, I don't focus stack any of my images. They're all done with higher f-stops to get more depth of field.
We got any other questions from anybody? For those that are watching, just put them in the Q&A, and I'll be glad to ask the question. Or anybody from the panel if they have any other questions. I know Mike's setup is so nice and simple. You don't have to go out and buy any expensive equipment.
Nope.
You can do it with pretty much any equipment that you have on hand. A good zoom lens will do just as well as some of the macro lenses that you can spend more money on. So,
Yeah, and the two cameras that I use, the mirrorless that I just got a couple years ago is $899. Fuji
yeah,
X-T30 Mark II, and my DSLR 7500 at the time I think was like 1,000. So you don't have to have an expensive camera to do this. And then my lenses, I don't even use my macro lens anymore. I'm using my zoom lenses because they focus in really, really close, down to 1.5 inches by 2.5 inches.
yeah,
So I have the 18 to 30 on my mirrorless and the 18 to 400 on my DSLR, and I don't use my macro lens anymore,
yeah.
just the zooms.
That's why I love bringing you in, because it's a type of photography anybody can do without having to go out and spend any kind of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a few questions here. Roger Lane is asking, do you use manual or autofocus?
You know, I always manually focused on my DSLR, but my new mirrorless camera, it has on the LCD, I can touch where I want it to focus with my finger. And that is
Yeah.
really, really nice. I can just look at the image on the LCD, determine where I want to place my focus, take my finger and touch it there, and it zooms right there for focus. It works way better than what I used to manually with my eye through the viewfinder, you know. So but no, not autofocus, because the autofocus doesn't know where you want to focus on that subject.
Yeah.
So I'm manually focusing, or on my new camera, I'm touching the back screen to place my focus on the image.
Okay. Lana Frumming, does Mike do a lot of cleanup on site or in post-processing? The specimens look so perfect versus
Yep.
what I usually find.
Most of it's done in cleanup in post-processing. I'll go into I'll use Smart Photo Editor to do all my creative post-processing, and then I'll take it into Elements because I like the spot healing brush, and all the little imperfections, little white dots and black dots, and all the little things that look, you know, that they just kind of clutter up that image with little debris, I guess. I will go in and clone all those things out, and I'll make it look as pristine as possible. So yeah, she noticed that they all look real nice, and I do that because, you know, I've had people say to me, "Well, but that's not natural." Well, I'm creating art. I want something that's
Yep.
artistic. Natural sometimes doesn't look all that good. And so I don't want to show something that's got all kinds of spots and debris and things on there. I want to clean it up and make it artistic. So yeah, but that's pretty much all done in post-processing. I mean, there's times when you might be able to brush off a little dirt or something or something on there, but a lot of times it's done in post-processing and with the spot healing brush or the cloning tool sometimes and that's in Elements, Photoshop Elements.
Okay. Pat Lynch wanted to know a little more info on NISA filter that you were using.
The Nisi filter?
Nisi, yeah.
Yeah, it's spelled capital N, small I, capital S, small I, Nisi. And they have this screw-on filter goes onto the front of your lens, and it'll double the magnification. So like a macro lens is a 1:1, and once you put it on there, it'll go to 2:1 magnification. So it'll get you in super close to your subject. But I forget what that runs. It's probably somewhere between $100 and $200, I'm guessing. Yeah,
Okay.
really, really nice. And then of course you have to buy it based on the size of your lens, your front of your lens, you know, the millimeter of the lens so that you get the right one. And then they have adapters too. If they don't have the right size, they can have adapters that can adapt to your lens on the front.
Oh, okay. Great. Anybody else have questions? Looks like we covered it. We're covering quite a bit of the country. We're getting all the way to California, Arizona.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to be I'm going to do this as a program where I'll include stuff from out west in the deserts and also in the south in the, you know, Florida tropical areas, subject matter. Again, that's not flowers and bugs, you know.
yeah,
But I wanted to cover this region of the northern region with the stuff I showed today because that's where you guys are, you know, that's where you
right.
are. And you're going to have the same, pretty much same environments that I'm shooting in. So you should be able to everything that I showed today, you should be able to find where you're at.
Great. Great. Well, I guess we don't have any other questions, so I'll say thank you again.
Oh, thank you.
Um,
This was much more fun than sitting upstairs watching TV, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also it was nice because this is the first time I presented this program, so I was curious on how long it was going to take because I have a lot more stuff I could have included in this that I didn't because I
Yeah.
was afraid it was going to run too long.
Yeah.
So I took
No.
about an hour, a little over an hour, so that's good.
Yeah.
Good timing.
Yeah,
Yep.
very good. Very
Yeah.
good.
It gives you a basic idea how far and how much more you might want to add.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because a lot of the clubs, they go, oh, you know, we don't want any more than 45 minutes and that. And in that case, I'd have to cut stuff out. And I hate to do that.
Right.
I don't want to cut
Right.
stuff out. I
Well,
want to show all the cool stuff that's out there.
we're happy to be guinea pigs. This is a good group for that. We cover a wide range of lakes, and I'm trying to get everybody to see all sorts of different types of photography. And I know your programs are always so well. And for any of you that are looking for somebody to put a program on for your camera club, give Mike a call because
Yep.
he does great ones. He's done a couple for our camera club, and we always have him back every year to do more.
Next, we'll have to do the one on composition.
Yeah.
We've got another hour program on composition.
Oh, that sounds good. We'll
Yeah,
have
we'll do that
to.
next year.
We'll work on that for next year because I'm constantly looking for speakers.
Yeah, I
Doing
always
12
said that-
speakers a year is tricky.
I always said that too many people spend too much time on the tech sites, you know, about equipment. They want to know what the latest, greatest new camera, latest, greatest. And you should be spending more time learning about composition, learning about subject matter, things to
Yeah.
what to shoot. And because the easy part is taking the picture. I mean, and you don't even need expensive equipment to do that nowadays. It's all good stuff.
Right.
So the main thing is learning about the subjects, what to shoot, where it's at, how to find it, and learning composition, how to compose things properly. But if I blog every single day on my blog. Go to my website and you look at my blog, you'll see every single day I'm posting a new blog post, and it's usually something educational. And if I post something about some new equipment, I'll get tons and tons of hits on that post. But if I'm posting something about composition, it'll be far less people want to read that. And that's
Yeah.
just backwards to me. I mean, that's what makes a good image is finding good subjects and composing them properly, and then good post-processing too.
Yeah, and you sure are able to pick out some of the littlest things on stuff.
Yeah.
From what I saw here, you know, I would pass by most of those objects without even seeing the little things that you're catching.
Exactly.
So it takes a lot of time and practice, I would imagine, to get that. And
Yeah, I mean,
but
I've spent 20 years wandering these woods, you know, learning about the subject matter and finding the subject matter. And again,
Yeah.
you know, like that one weird fungus I found. Well, that's like 20 years after I started shooting out there that I found that. So you're always
Sure.
finding things that are happening, but you got to be out there. If you're
Yeah.
not out there, you're not going to find stuff. So it's
Yeah.
a matter of how much time you want to invest and how much time do you have to invest to be out there in the field.
No, that's true. Definitely true. So,
Okay, guys.
well, great. Well, thank you, Mike. We
Thanks for having
appreciate
me.
you coming on and teaching us a little bit, giving us some more new ideas on what to photograph. So,
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love doing this. So
yeah, and I think we just lost him. So,
Yeah, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. I've known
Yeah.
Mike for many years. He's
I've
good.
known him.
Friendly guy.
God, I think
Yeah.
it's 15 or 20 years now that
Yeah.
we've had Mike come on, and he always has good ideas. And what I love is that it's with the most basic equipment that you could have. So it's something anybody can do, and yeah, he's always great to come on. And like I said, if your camera club is looking for a speaker, get in contact with him. He's not expensive, and he puts on very good programs. So he's got quite a few to work from.
Yeah, he's a good fellow to have a beer and a hamburger with too. So
Yep. Hmm. So I guess we'll start our Well, we're into our second hour here. Marty, you want to do your little thing first?
Yeah, I guess I could jump into that. So, for the members who are PSA members and been a member of the chapter quite a while, I've got some sad news to report that Don Frisk, who was a longtime member, he passed away yesterday. So, talking with one of his sons yesterday, they're not going to do any kind of really big celebration of life. Don didn't really want that. But at some point as a chapter, we'll probably put something together to do a little honor for him. But if you've known Don for years and you have a good little story you'd like to share, they are looking for that kind of thing. So if you want to put something together and send that to me, maybe you traveled with him, maybe you were out shooting with him, maybe you were in a meeting and he said something funny or whatever. But I'd appreciate if you did know Don and you do have a little story that you can put that together. Just email it to me, and then I'll forward that on to the family. So that's the report.
Yeah, it's a shame. Don was a neat guy. I ran into him when I first joined PSA chapter, and we went to Turkey Run. So, he was an interesting guy. Took care of me on that first trip, and I've known him ever since, and always been fun to talk to. And he enjoyed a lot of the different types of photography. So yeah, he'll be missed. So yeah,
But
it's a shame.
if you didn't know Don, you want to see some of his images, he does. I do have a gallery page on the chapter website under the member galleries. So you can go there and see his famous Lee Falls image and read a little bit about him and just watch a little slideshow. You can see some of his favorite really good images. So he was quite a talent.
So after that news, anybody have anything they'd like to discuss or have questions or problems with? Anybody from the audience, just throw it in the Q&A and we'll be glad to try to answer it. So
I got my usual conflict going on with storage units, and I just ran across a SanDisk, what they call a Pro Blade Station desktop SSD storage enclosure, and then of course you buy that, and then you plug in these 4 terabyte units into it. So I was just wondering if anybody's had any experience with that one at all. It's made by SanDisk, which is usually a reputable company.
It's kind of like
I got it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I don't have any info on it.
I don't either. I'm just wondering, Hubert, it's kind of like one of the nasty things, like you have interchangeable drives you can put in and out of it then.
Yeah, it looks like it's pretty well dedicated to their drives.
Right.
And it's not necessarily cheap, but I'm just tired of, I'm getting to the point where I have over 5 gigabytes on my 6 gigabyte external drive, and I got to do something to it. And I was thinking of going strictly all SSD this time instead of the other. Though I've never had a failure on any of my disks, knock on wood. But I guess it's just something that might happen one of these days. And then of course I'm backed up by Blackblaze, so I think it's Backblaze. Is that what they call it? Backblaze?
Yeah.
Just in case, but I'm just curious because this is really frustrating, and to me. And then I get into my Apple stuff, and then my laptop now, which is a 2018, it won't go above Monterey, and Photoshop, the latest edition of Photoshop, it wouldn't download on it. So.
Right. Yeah. You're reaching that point, unfortunately.
Yeah. Of course, my mini Mac's my main computer, so that's all my files are tied to. But I use the laptop when I travel. So. I'm
Yeah.
thinking about maybe down the road, I'm going to replace that with an AirBook, because all I want to do is just download when I'm on traveling and look at what I've shot, perhaps maybe do a little editing, but not a whole lot, and then use an external drive with it. It seemed like that's going to work for me, but
Hubert, I did just that earlier this year. I think it was earlier this year when I replaced my MacBook Pro. I went to a MacBook Air.
Yeah.
Mostly because you're right. That's all I was using it for was when I was traveling. I mean, I do use it, as a secondary computer at home, but it's certainly a much more economical way to go with Apple products to do the
yeah,
do the MacBook Air versus another MacBook Pro if you're not using it for all the computing power it actually has.
yeah, Apple's not cheap on anything that they do. It's good products. I've never complained about them. I've never had any issues with them, but they are expensive up front. And then, of course, I have to deal with a spouse who says, "What? You want to do what? Okay. What do you got now?
Yeah.
What, doesn't that work?" Some of you
Yeah.
might be familiar with that tone of voice. I don't know, but we just
Yeah,
deal with
no,
it.
that's always a problem.
So
You're always
I
having to
did-
update.
Has
So-
anybody had any of these SSD cards or SSD storage units go bad on them or anything?
I haven't yet, and I've got like
Okay.
3 of them going
Yeah.
from SanDisk, the 1 terabyte units. I use one for my Lightroom catalog, and I store just the Lightroom catalog on that SSD drive and all the sorted parts that it needs to use, and then it's plugged in by Thunderbolt right into my main Mac computer, and it's just about as fast as using the internal hard drive of the Mac computer, and it's worked well and it hasn't died, although I do make sure I keep a backup of the catalog just in case it would. But that catalog's like almost 400 megabytes in size, or gigabytes in size, because I have so many images. I'm getting pretty bad at deleting stuff. So
yeah, I've been very bad about that, but I just never want to take the time to go back all through and start kicking them out, I guess. It's
Right.
probably, I would guess I could kick out 40% if I went back and looked at them, but I'm not in the mood for that. So, okay,
the
well, I
only
appreciate
problem, the only problem with SSDs is when they crash, there's no recovery from them. There's no way to get any data off them because when they go, they go. So that's the one drawback with an SSD. So you want to always make sure you have a backup with it. Spinning drives, you can always send that into a company that can actually recover data from it. So that's the only difference. And some people think that, use SSD as your main drive and then use a spinning drive, which is slower for a backup. And that can work. I hate to say I have 2 boxes that have 8 drives in it each, and I have all my stuff backed up at least double and my main drive triple, just in case a drive would go, along with Backblaze as well. So trouble is those boxes aren't cheap, and then you're constantly doing hard drives. But Mac Sales makes a bunch of boxes that are pretty decent, and you can put SSDs in them to speed them up a little bit. So that would be another option. I didn't find the SanDisk one that you were talking about, but I just did a quick search on SanDisk. So
yeah, I just came across that one, and it was 300 about to get that and 2 4-gigabyte things. You're talking about $1,000 for that. So that's what.
Okay.
So it's about 350 of whatever you want to do for each unit. So it's not too bad, but
Yeah.
still, again, but whereas the spin drives, you know what? I think I bought an 8 terabyte spin drive for less than $200. So
Yeah, SSDs certainly have come down in price, so that's been nice. And I'm slowly want to switch over to SSDs. I will probably always just slowly shift all my spinning drive to SSDs as I can afford it. But right now I have something like 25 terabytes worth of images, so it's a little expensive to do. But
And then when you move them out of your catalog, you got to move them within the catalog to that new drive, right?
yeah.
Okay.
But you can add. It's easy enough to get it to show up on Lightroom.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right.
Let's see. Lana said not specific to the mentioned, but she does use external drives for her images. If they never leave my house, should I have security password or something else on it? So she's sort of asking. I don't do security if it doesn't leave your house. The only thing I would make sure you do is that you have all your drives backed up. And even I'm paranoid. Everybody knows that I'm paranoid about losing images. So I have my stuff backed up in about 4 different ways. And I have an extra backup right on my desktop. It's actually backs it up automatically. Then I have a second set of backups that's here that just make sure that it's in a separate box from the ones that I've got, just in case something happens to the first set. I have a third set of backups that sit in a fireproof vault. Right now, it's going to be sitting in just a closet or in a storage room that I have. And that one I do like once a month just to back it up and try to keep it protected in case my house would burn down. Then I would at least have them protected in a fireproof vault, and hopefully they would survive. It's hard to say whether they would. I'm trying to keep them off property so that it's something that will last. My last backup is Backblaze, as Hubert mentioned. Backblaze works in the background and will copy everything to their cloud. I think it's now up to about $8 per month for unlimited backup. So the one trick is it does take quite a long time if you have a terabyte or more for it to back up. Although with today's newer internet speeds getting faster, it may not take as long to upload as it might. So hopefully that helps. I wouldn't worry about putting a password on it unless you've got a lot of strangers coming into your house and might want to steal your stuff. But that odds of them finding that stuff is, to me, pretty small. So I don't worry about it that way. But so hope that answers your question, Lana. Jim Karofsky says there were some problems with the 4 terabyte SSDs from SanDisk. That was like a year ago. They would either fail. They would really slow down on taking data in at a time. So I remember that. Hopefully, I think that was fixed by a firmware update. They will still fail, but they seem to be, pretty reliable. I haven't had much trouble with them. The only thing I know is when they fail, I haven't found any way to be able to recover any data because it usually is something internal and everything's gone. So, any other questions, problems? Suggestions for program topics. I'm always looking for that because it gets tricky. We've had a wide range of stuff. I do not have a speaker for November, so I'm going to be talking about the new stuff. Photoshop just was updated to a brand new version. I can't remember which number we're on. Lightroom, I think, is on version 14, which is a brand new version, and Photoshop is 20. I go by Photoshop 2025.
Yeah.
That's the easiest. So there's a bunch of new stuff I'm hoping to get caught up. I've been a little behind on things because I've moved to a new house and trying to downsize from a big house to a little house is taking quite a bit of work and time, but slowly getting there. December, we won't have a meeting. I'll just be putting out a video like I normally do for December. And I don't believe I've got anything set up for next year yet. Oh, I hate when I lose my cursor. Okay, is it down? I gotta go up. Marty, I set this stuff up so it could work on 2 computers, and now I lose my mouse and I can never get it back. It's on my other computer right now.
I know you got to run it to the side, and I can never remember which side because I know when
Well, that's my problem. So people with Macs, if you do it, you got to look out that it's either, I thought it was from the bottom, brings it back to the top of my screen, but
can't remember if it's from the left or the right, but I know I've gotten it where, because I've got my main computer, I've got my iPad usually in front of me, and I've got my MacBook Air.
Yep.
And sometimes I get off the main computer. I'm like, where the hell is it? And how do I get it back?
Yeah, and that's where I am right now myself. So that's really drives me nuts when it does that.
I mean,
Okay.
it's cool that we could do it, but at the same time,
Yep. So people, sometimes these new tricks work well, and other times they don't. And I can't. It's stuck over on my other computer. I wish it would. I can't find. And I've got too many screens now. Should be that way. Huh. Be nice if you just hit escape and be able to do it. But I don't think I have anything set up for next year yet. I'm working on that. So I'm looking for ideas from anybody. Send me new people. I do have a couple ideas for some people that I'm going to be working on. Just to give people an idea for Wacko, we have Daryl Gouline will be our March speaker. I don't remember the topic, but we had 2 topics. Ken, do you remember? We talked about it, but
Yes, Ken doesn't remember right off the top of my head either.
and I don't either because I wasn't.
Oh.
I knew I wanted to mention it, but I forgot the 2 topics. It's on
While you're
landscape
talking,
photography.
I'll look it up while you're talking here.
Okay, so
and then just mention for the chapter members, our next meeting is on November 17th, and we have Mike Mezul.
Mike Mezul.
Second, he will be presenting on storm photography. So we've had Mike here on the digital forum, so he'll be a welcome addition to have at the chapter meeting as well.
Yeah, he does a really nice job with that stuff, and storm photography is always interesting. So yeah, I finally got my mouse back.
Leave it alone, it'll come back too, I think.
Okay, let me just see if I've got anything for January this week. That's the trouble. We have all the different things that we do these days.
And so on the Wacko site, under program, you just have the
yeah, I haven't even had a chance to get it on the Wacko site. Yeah, next month I'm gonna see if I can get Hazel Meredith to come and talk about filters. If I don't get her in November, I'm gonna have her probably in January. Yeah, I haven't started next year's stuff so far. But I hope everybody's been enjoying the speakers I've been finding. It's trying to get away from just the general photography stuff with this group, because we all do the normal stuff, and it's been interesting, you know, with the postcard stuff and the abstract works from Phil, and the still life photography from Mark. I'm still trying to, I've been so busy I haven't been able to get Mark's up for the month that he said we could leave it up. So it's that still life one was a really interesting one and covered some really good topics. So let's see, you know, I might be able to see if I can find Daryl here. Yeah, the two subjects are going to be on travel photography and landscape photography from Daryl Gouline. So should be a nice half-day program. He's a Canon legend. He's out of Samish, Washington.
When is that, Jeff? I missed a lot of, my internet.
Yeah, your internet looks like it's going on and off there.
Yeah, I went down and rebooted my router, and hopefully that'll solve the problem. But I missed the end of the presentation there, and I didn't have, he gave a link to his blog.
Right. It's mikemoats.com or tinylandscapes.com. Yeah. And I'll make sure I have that in when I get put the link up on the website for us. So yeah, joining his club is pretty good. He has a lot of good stuff there. And Daryl Gouline will be in March, WACO's March seminar, and that will be the first Saturday in March. We'll have that information up on the website soon. I have to get the photos from Daryl, and we'll be publicizing that. And I don't have a price for that one yet, but it'll be pretty reasonable. So he wasn't too expensive of a speaker. So with that, I can't think of anything else. If nobody has any other questions, we'll call it a day. It's a little early, but I got a ton of work to do today.
Breaking leaves, I'll bet.
Yeah, I'm still getting rid of stuff from downsizing a huge house down to a small house. So I've got a lot of stuff to pack up. So I want to thank everybody for coming today. Next month, we'll see what we end up with. It will either be me talking about Photoshop and Lightroom, and hopefully other people can kick in on that, because I'm keeping up with it, but just barely. But it should be an interesting discussion with the new stuff and all the new AI features that they've added in. And I've listened to a number of people that have talked about it already, so it should be pretty good. So with that, I'll say goodbye and hope you have a good weekend. And we'll see you next month. I think that's Thanksgiving weekend, if I know my timing is about right. So
the weekend before Thanksgiving, actually. So
is it? Oh, good. Usually it's during Thanksgiving weekend.
Nope, so 23rd, and so it's in the Thanksgiving then 28th. So we're actually pretty good.
Thanksgiving's late this year. Okay, that works out a little better. I'll only lose the people that go deer hunting.
Yeah, taping time is early this year. That's tonight. We got to change our clocks. So, yeah.
Oh, is tonight the chime change?
I think it's
No, next
November 3rd,
weekend.
next weekend.
Oh, next week. Okay, next week after the
Well,
wacko
it's on the calendar somewhere
competition.
tonight, but, yeah, okay. Another week. That sounds more
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Yep.
Sounds good. Well, everybody have a good beginning of November, and we'll see you late November for the next meeting. Thanks a
Thank you.
lot.
Yeah.